I'm DiDi, and I've worked in coffee for over a decade. I love coffee, and as much as I've learned about coffee in that time, my desire to learn more has only grown. Coffee is a daily, simple pleasure to us, and I love that. But it's also fun to explore the complexities, not only in flavor, but where it comes from, how it's made, and what it says about us. There's still so much to discover. In this show, I'm talking with coffee people in and around my hometown of Atlanta to seek deeper insights, explore the future of the beverage, and find out what makes us tick. Today, we're going back to East Pole Coffee with Karr. He's taking us through the entire process of a roast, step by step. This week, we're talking about the technical aspects of roasting coffee. The first time I smelled roasting coffee, I was walking down the streets in Tribeca with a friend, and she said, "Do you smell that?" It's like, "It smells like burned popcorn." Well, now when I walk into a coffee roastery, I smell this green coffee seed being transformed into a brown coffee bean. It's that smell that's like alchemy, this thing changing. What it's turned into is something that has all this potential for sweetness or acidity, for flavors like strawberries or dark chocolate. Really though, it's just cooking. You're taking heat in the form of gas or airflow or even drum rotation to come up with these flavors that we now know as coffee. But how does it all work? Let's figure it out. Walk me through the process of a roast.
Okay. So we'll get in a little early, and I'll turn on the roaster and let it warm up for 30, 45 minutes. When we're ready to roast, what we'll do is there's a big hopper on top. We'll load green coffee in there, and we'll release a lever into a drum that's constantly moving with about 16 burners underneath. And the temperature starts out pretty high. Like if we're charging a small batch, it's about 405 degrees. Starts off about there, but then when green coffee enters, it starts to pull down that temperature. And so temperature is going to drop down to about 200 degrees, and then it's going to start rising again. And my job as a roaster is to monitor basically the rate of rise, so how fast this roast is, the temperature is rising. And in order to adjust how fast or how slow it's rising, I have basically two variables. One is gas or energy in, and then airflow, and that's just how fast air is moving out of the roaster. And so a good analogy I like to use is if you're driving a boat into a dock, you don't want to fly through the dock and just break it. But you also don't want to stop way outside of the dock. And so that's translated as if a rate of rise is really high going into the end of the roast, then it's just going to kind of run away on me, and it's going to get really hot, and the coffee's going to get not pleasant. And then if it's too low and I run out of gas here, and my rate of rise starts to deplete until it's at zero, and then it starts to drop off, then your coffee's going to get really stale. And if it's not up to where you want it to be, somewhat close to your charge temperature, then you're going to have a coffee that's just not very good. And so that's kind of like the process of figuring out, okay, how much energy do I apply at the beginning to get me back up? And then how much do I take away so that I'm not letting this just run away or letting it just taper off completely? And so that's the fun part of figuring out, okay, I got to get it back up here, not too fast, not too slow. I want it to not stall out or whatever. And so that's the process of it, and getting it up to where I want it, and then I drop it out into the cooling tray. The cooling tray pulls all that hot air out, all the chaff, goes back into the afterburner, burns all that up, and then we're left with our coffee that we package and sell.
So the things that you're watching for in the drum, you're watching for temperature and you're watching time. What else are you paying attention to?
So when I'm saying making adjustments for adding energy or taking away energy, whatever, I'm watching. I have mainly two moments where coffee is going from pale green to yellow, and yellowing, I'll start marking what temperature, what number that is, so that I can mainly roast by the numbers and less by sensory. But Yellowing is an indicator for me because it's a color change, and I'm able to manipulate the air and the gas at that moment. And then pretty soon after yellowing, the coffee starts to turn brown. And at that moment, I'll also pay attention to what the temperature is, and I'll start making adjustments there. And then after browning, you've got a little bit of a segment before you get to first crack. And first crack sounds kind of like popcorn. It starts popping, and anytime after first crack, you can drop the coffee and drink it. But if you do it at the very beginning of it, we have those hay-like qualities that are going to be super bright, super green, like hay-ish, and just not pleasant. And so at the other end of that spectrum, you've got burnt coffee. And actually, after first crack, you get to a place called second crack, which most people in specialty coffee don't really get to that point. We don't get to that point here at East Pole. But we try to find a happy medium somewhere in between that's properly developed, that's got that good sweetness, that little bit of acidity in the body, and then we drop it from there. So this is the hopper. We load up green coffee into the hopper, drops into this drum chamber. We got the sight glass here, we're able to see it constantly moving. And then basically what I'm doing now is I'm monitoring the bean temperature. What's about to happen, we charged at 405, there's a hot internal temperature there, and we entered in a foreign object that's cold, right? And so what it's going to start doing is it's going to start bringing that temperature down. And my job as the roaster is to monitor that temperature and wait until it gets to a turn, and then start calculating what's called a rate of rise. And you can do that. There are some programs that'll do it for you. We do ours a little more manually. And so we're inputting numbers every 30 seconds typically. And so once the turn happens, I've got air closed a little bit down here. And once I see that turn happen, I'm going to open up air. So a turn just happened. We're going to open up air. And so every once in a while you can check what you start with. If you have a green coffee bean, it's pretty pale.
What's it smell like right now?
So typically right now it'll smell kind of like hay, like a hay-like smell. And then when browning happens, which is the next phase, and it's really close to yellowing, you're going to start smelling like toast. It kind of starts smelling malty or toasty. And then as it gets closer to first crack, you're going to start smelling it like coffee, like what you'd expect coffee to smell like. So we're getting close to first crack, and I have adjustments that I've already profiled out. And so we're going to adjust airflow, we're opening up air, and we're going to adjust gas.
Are you making it hotter or less hot?
Less hot. And the reason I use yellowing and browning as like adjustments, and you can even see in the sight glass here that it's starting to change colors, is because those are really good indicators for me as a roaster to be able to replicate the same roast, the same flavor, because consistency is key. That's across the board. We want a really consistently good product. And this just allows me to do that. It allows me to replicate a process that I've been working on and honing in on.
Can I see the coffee in the dryer now?
Yeah, sure. You see we're getting a little tan, it's getting a tan. You can see it's definitely changed from the pale green to like a sandy brown.
I can see them starting to puff up a little bit too.
Right, yeah. It gets a lot bigger, it gets a lot more brittle because we're kind of pushing out all the chemical compounds that are in there. And most of that is water. And so we're coming up on first crack, like here first crack. So at about 360 degrees, I'll keep my head in like this and act like I'm just listening to what the roaster's saying. And I'm waiting for a popping noise, similar to like whenever you would pour milk over Rice Krispie treats. Remember that, like the little popping sounds that you get from that. And so that's it, if you can hear that. And so now I'm gonna make an adjustment.
So now that all of the moisture is out of the coffee, what are you doing cooking-wise with the beans during this last portion of the roast?
So right now we're just getting it to proper development is what I like to say. We shoot for sweetness. That's kind of our goal, is to have a sweet coffee. And so you can see these beans have grown quite a bit. They're dark like you would normally see them.
Smells great.
It smells great. It doesn't smell like hay. It doesn't smell like toast. It actually smells like what coffee should smell like. So now I'm about to drop the coffee. So we hit our mark. We were within 10 degrees of first crack, which is what or what we dropped it at. That's what I like being at. And so, yeah, you've got this fan that's pulling hot air down and smoke down, so it just turned on. and you've got these arms that are moving the beans to make sure they're going to cool. They'll cool in about 4 minutes. If you were to touch it right now, it'd be very, very hot. You definitely would not want to do that.
What coffee is this?
So this is the Tolima. This is what we have on espresso right now. This is what we have on pour over. It's a really delicious coffee from Colombia. Been really, really pleased with this. As a whole, when I am approaching a new coffee, I want to pull out sweetness. Like that's the number one thing I try to find. If I can find it, sweetness, like a sweet coffee, that's a good coffee to drink, right? But different coffees from different regions of the world are going to have different flavors. Like I'm not going to be able to pull out fruity notes if a coffee doesn't have fruity notes in it already, like a green coffee. So like naturally processed coffees, for example, I know when I'm approaching that, then my mindset is, all right, I'm going to try to pull out some jammy notes, some like real fruit heavy, wine-like acidity maybe, and like play around from there. I'm not going to use that same mindset on like a Guatemalan coffee that's like a washed Guatemalan coffee from like Huehuetenango. I'm not going to approach that and be like, okay, there are probably fruity notes in there that I'm going to pull out some like wine-like, like that's just not there. And so we try to develop appropriately, we don't try to underdevelop, we don't try to overdevelop.
So you're looking for this harmony of like sweetness and acidity, like that spot where those things meet together.
Definitely, yeah. Because again, on the front end, if you're looking at it like a bell graph, the acidity is going to start to rise and then it's going to taper off. And then while it's tapering off, somewhere like while it's on its way down, sweetness starts to rise and its body's kind of following suit. And so I'm trying to like play around. Sometimes a coffee doesn't really taste good as an acidic coffee, right? And so I'll be like, that didn't taste that great. I'm going to reprofile this and develop it a little bit longer. And that happens like fairly often. If I have an idea about a coffee and then I taste it on the cupping table, I'm like, that idea was a bad idea. So I'll like reapproach it and be like, all right, what could I do to maybe like manipulate this flavor a little bit?
So it sounds like it's a call and response.
Yeah.
So you throw out an idea to the coffee. You're like, all right, do you like this? And then you assess it on the cupping table and decide whether or not the coffee was into that. So then you are making adjustments so that you're getting, this like clean profile that best suits the coffee.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I'll typically start with like a profile that I've had from a previous coffee. Like so if I bought a new coffee, a new Guatemalan coffee, then I'll look through my profiles and I'll find a Guatemalan coffee that was pretty similar to this green coffee. And I'll use that profile to start with as just a base starting point. And if the numbers look good, the taste good, then I'll keep it. But if it's going a little fast or it's going too slow, or I'm getting like some funky like notes in it, then I'll adjust that profile and then rename it for the coffee that I have. And sometimes maybe it takes like 2 or 3 times before I'm like very happy with what the coffee is doing. But that's a fun part of roasting. Like you get to like play around with, it's basically like recipes. You're just playing around with it and getting to produce this product that is good as long as the green coffee is good when it comes to you. Like that's the big, you can't make green coffee good if it's not good to start with.
I feel like that's a better way to talk about like how, like one's line of coffee comes out tasting like. Is this like theory behind how you capture sweetness and acidity? And it's not like you're trying to like create an East Pole style of roasting.
Right.
It's all elemental, right? It's like your palate, your equipment, your space.
Yeah.
And then, at the base of it, obviously, is your selection in green coffee too. But that like artist touch comes out in all those different avenues and then creates very much like a Jared coffee.
Right, yeah, totally.
It's like the hand of a chef. You can give that same recipe to so many different chefs, but it's like the way that they approach it with their method and their palate will affect the outcome of the flavor.
Maxwell House, the predictable coffee from General Foods.
Horizon Coffee. It's rich in hand-selected coffee beans. Some coffees use mostly strip-picked beans. All the beans ready or not.
We say Horizon C to beans at peak flavor, Horizon No to the rest.
Horizon Coffee, new from General Foods. Always rich, never heavy.
U-Ban. Flavor so good you can't put it down.
Discover U-Ban and richness worth a second cup.
Brim. 97% caffeine free. The first strong coffee without caffeine.
New improved Brim. So much more fresh ground flavor and aroma. You won't believe it's decaffeinated. So much more fresh ground flavor. You won't believe it's decaffeinated.
Fill your cup to the rim with the richness of Brim. Fill your cup to the rim with the richness of Brim.
Rich taste is only part of perfect coffee. Another part is smoothness. Now, General Foods introduces a totally new coffee that's both. The perfect cup. Extra care makes it extra rich. Reduced caffeine makes it smooth. Rich and smooth. Mmm, the perfect cup.
Thanks, Chip and Jared, for showing me how to roast coffee. See you guys next time. I love you. Bye-bye.